Hello and welcome back to Building on a Budget Models. I'm Thomas and this is the second part of the Revell 1/24 Jaguar E-Type. Now firstly, I'd finished the engine in the previous video, so I decided to use some matte yellow paint to do the floor. However, this was matte yellow from Humbrol and I wasn't very happy with the coverage, and it was still showing through quite a lot of the kind of green overspray from the bodywork. So I changed to using Revell Ochre. This is their acrylic, and it went down much nicer, and I ended up using this paint for other parts of the interior as well. Now there's two versions of the dashboard, as you can see here, for if you want to do a right-hand drive or a left-hand drive version of the car. I'm using the right-hand drive dash as I plan to give this British registration plates. Now usually the dashboard didn't actually match the interior of the Series 1 cars, so that's why I'm doing this in black with a centre console in silver. Now there are various different interior decals depending on whether you're doing right-hand drive or left-hand drive. I'm not sure if there is a difference between these two, but I have seen Revell decals in the past where some of them represent kilometers per hour and some of them represent miles. I thought about doing a silver trim to these, but when I looked at a real example, I noticed that it didn't have that. Now, the center console here has two options. One of them is this large decal, which covers all of it. Now, I decided to use this first, but I wasn't happy with how it went down. Many of the switches and displays here are raised, and even with some microsol, it just looked a mess. So I removed that decal and I chose to use the individual dials instead. As well as doing this, I also used a little bit of black on the end of a cocktail stick for some of the switches. I used some microsol to help the radio decal adhere better to the raised details. Now the steering wheel is really nicely moulded, just sanding off a few burrs off the edge. Some of the holes in the kind of arms are already opened up, but I wanted to try and do a bit more than that, so I stuck it onto a piece of white tack. Firstly used the micro drill to kind of remove some of the flash from the ones that were already open, and then used a slightly smaller drill bit to open up the other ones. There were two on the extreme left and right which were too small to open up, but I think it looks pretty good. Then used some Tamiya silver acrylic on the metallic parts. And this is Revell acrylic semi-gloss brown around the wooden edge. When this had dried, I covered it with a clear gloss to give it a bit more of a sheen. Now you may need to sand the slot for the pedals a bit more because I found it was a bit of a tight fit. Make sure you check the instructions carefully, that you get the steering wheel in the right position before gluing it. There's then a small tab which fits underneath the dashboard to help this glue into position. This is the kind of Jaguar checkered flag sort of insignia, which they later used on the wheels of the E-Types as well. Initially it didn't adhere to the kind of convex surface, but microsol really helped here. Now a warning, I give myself a very minor injury in the moment, and if you don't like the sight of a little bit of blood, skip ahead about 15 to 20 seconds. I went against my better judgment and didn't use white tack, and then stabbed myself with a very thin drill bit. After washing it and cleaning the wound with a bit of antiseptic, I was then fine to continue. I then added the gear stick, and the drilled hole was for the handbrake, which can go on either side depending on whether you're doing right hand or left hand drive. Who says I don't suffer for my art? This section then clips in really nicely. It's cool that this is a separate part because it means that there's no fiddly masking in the interior for this metallic surface. There is then a very, very small decal on top of the gear stick. And these decals here are speakers for the radio, which is a really nice feature, though I'm not sure whether you'll be able to see them at all once the roof is on. Nice to know they're there. There are then also these very small chrome clips which go either side of the seats. I'm not sure what these are, and I've actually driven an E-Type, and I can't remember seeing these. Now the dashboard itself clips behind the sort of housing for the gear stick. As I said before, you may need to adjust the pedals a little bit because I found that it was a tight fit on the driver's side. Now this sort of boot interior I did in the same ochre, and then there are some chrome strips, decals to go along some of the runners. Microsole is very useful here, and also try to act, carefully and quickly to line them up as straight as possible. These decals are really nicely printed. You can see how metallic they look when they catch the light. Again, this is a really nice feature. I wouldn't have liked to mask and paint all of these tiny chrome strips. The longer ones here prove a little bit more challenging. But patience and the tweezers really helped. I also used a wet cotton bud to push some of these into place. And now I'm on to the last one. The penultimate one, I should say. There we are. And that slots really nicely into place just here. Use just a little bit of thin cement to glue that in. And then similarly there is this panel, which is also done in ochre. There are some small clips on one side of it and some kind of screw heads, which I did with a little bit of silver on the end of a cocktail stick. And then there are 5 decals on the other side. 3 of them black and 2 of them chrome, I believe. But it's this kind of detail that really, I think, sets this new kit apart from some of the E-Type kits that have come in the past. And that clips quite nicely into place. Just added a little bit of thin cement at the joins, just like before. What do you think of the tan interior? The kit suggested black, and I thought that that would just disappear once the roof went on. There's then this much smaller panel which goes just behind the seats. This is just painted, there are no decals on this at all. There is a window winder and a door handle for the door panels. These are both from the chrome sprue, but the window winder needs to have a little bit of semi-gloss black on the tip. The pins on these are in such a way they're kind of semicircular so that they will only fit in one particular position. I then used a little bit of CA glue on the rear. Pretty happy with that. There are then some more chrome strip decals to go onto the doors. These parts are raised, and I suppose you could mask and paint these or use something like bare metal foil if you preferred. Now on one of the doors, in fact I think you can see here, this is the driver, so on the passenger side door I unfortunately tore one of the decals and it wasn't fixable, so I found that it matched the colour of Revell silver paint pretty much exactly, so I used a very thin brush just to finish the chrome strip. It's not perfect, but I think it's fine, does the job. Just like before, these clip into place, but the awkward thing is that they need to be clipped in with the two sections at the bottom and then sort of eased underneath the dashboard. I then added a tiny bit of cement around the joins and they were secure. So this side, which would either be this side or the other side depending on which right-hand drive or left-hand drive version you were doing, I found the most awkward, I think, because the position of the pedals just meant that there was less movement. Just be gentle and patient and it should work out. Now the seats are slightly different, so refer to the instructions and the numbers. Just a little bit of cement on the bottom of these and they were secure in place. I thought about doing seat belts, but in all the examples that I saw, the seat belts were kind of hidden when not in use behind the seats, so I decided to leave them off. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. One of the decals is a logbook and kind of driver's manual, which is a really nice feature. I decided, however, to just cut this out and keep it on the decal paper, as I didn't want it to kind of adhere to the shape of the seat. I just put a little bit of white tack on the back of that to stick it to the seat. As I mentioned in the unboxing video, the wire wheels are moulded entirely out of the chrome sprue, and there aren't actually any holes in them. So I was hoping that the Tamiya panel line accent, the black one, would work well to make these look more realistic. So I kind of liberally slathered it on and dabbed away any excess with the cotton bud. And I'm quite happy to say that I'm really pleased with how these look. I know a lot of people have bought aftermarket versions, but actually I think that Revell have done a really good job with these. You can see how crisp the detail is once the black shading has been added. Now there are these kind of parts in here, like a frame to maintain the shape, so use the clippers to remove those and then to also clean it up afterwards. I also gave it a light sanding just to make it look like it's been used a bit. The wheels are made up of 3 parts, this kind of black part which goes on the inside, and then the grey part connects to the car, and then I used some super glue to glue these two together. Once I was happy that that had set, I then put it onto the tyre. Now I'd actually recommend doing the black wash after you've put the tyre together, as I found that this kind of squeezing and all my thumbs and fingers and whatnot wiped off a lot of the still wet black panel line accents, so I then had to do it again. Which is why my fingers look so dirty. I used a little CA glue around the edge of this hole here to fit the chrome spinner to the centre. And then because these were moulded from red plastic, which the chrome kind of exposed, I put a little dab of silver. And then there are some nice little Jaguar decals to go in the middle, which no one will ever notice. But still, I know they're there, and now you do too. What do you think of these wheels? Would you be using these ones, or would you want to get aftermarket replacements? Let me know in the comments. And here we have it. Here's the finished interior. We'll look at the wheels in a moment. Next video, I'll be working on the exterior. So thank you very much for watching. Please do comment, like, share and subscribe. And I'll see you soon.